Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So ready to rock and roll from transition from the Microsoft world over to Citrix and NetScaler. So that was, kind of announced it as separate business units, and now they're kind of bringing that brand back with Citrix, and you'll understand why here in a little bit and why it makes sense. So excited to talk through some of the updates. So I got a lot of content here, so going to do my best to streamline it and hit on some of the key points to consider. So yeah, so basically when talking about so obviously the biggest hottest topic right now obviously is hot off the press, the latest LTSR. We actually told Citrix, listen, we got a webinar coming up. We need you to drop it before, grease some palms a little bit. We got to drop. Thank you. So you kind of have three kind of scenarios here on the LTSR side of things of where it kind of plays into your architecture or your framework there. So, obviously, you can have Citrix DAS, or we'll talk about kind of the new naming and things like that. But, you have basically cloud control plane. And with that said, basically, you can then, obviously do the current release. We see a lot of customers do the current release for the VDA, and then you can have mixed scenarios, right? Where you have maybe a delivery group that has LTSR, VDAs where you're maybe a more, compliant based, or more compliant based environment, whether it's healthcare or financial services, maybe you want to have that LTSR VDA. You also have from another deployment standpoint, right? You can do what's called traditionally CVAD, or what's called IT managed CVAD. That's where you're running Citrix on-prem. Now it's called Citrix Private Cloud, 100% on premises. In that case, it's LTSR components on the back end plus the VDA. And then obviously you have the Citrix Workspace app client that also is traditionally BYO. You got auto updates out there for years now. You're on the latest, later CWA clients, but you still have those really compliance-driven environments where you do require, a real sturdy, LTSR VDA. And so 2402 already dropped from that perspective. All right. So with that said, we'll take a look at some of the important topics here, or highlights. So as I just mentioned, we went GA on 4/15 tax day. No coincidence there. Hopefully everyone got their taxes in on time. I know I had to file an extension because I'm last minute. So 19, the biggest thing Oz mentioned during the update there was basically the 1912 LTSR for the 21% of the people on this call, December 2024, right? So obviously there's already either plans in place. You're looking at it very heavily. Are you going to 2203? Or are you going with the 2402? So we'll talk through some of those differences there, and obviously which direction. If you're on the current release track, 2402 is really just kind of the next update there. So, business as usual for you. With that though, 1912, important to note, 1912 VDA, the latest LTSR, support there is 2012 R2. So for 2012 R2, you can't go past that 1912 VDA. So hopefully you're moving forward. Obviously the end of support there, you've already moved, hopefully you've moved forward. If not, you need to, move forward on the OS infrastructure as well as on the VDA side. Yep. So a few big CVAD, Citrix Private Cloud / CVAD highlights. So one of the biggest ones we're super excited about is the release of Web Studio. Wow. Round of applause. I hear everyone cheering. I don't know if you guys could hear it, but I got a direct line into the audience. Everyone's cheering. Web Studio, pretty much full feature parity with the REST APIs now. What you have on the DAS side is also on premises. Citrix set out about a year and a half ago or so and said, hey, we screwed up. We over-rotated, try to push everyone to DAS for basically coming back and saying, look, hybrid, you have options, and we're going to make that full feature parity, and they delivered. And so things like auto scale, multi-site support, all the goodness that's there within Web Studio is now 100% on premises. So if you take a look at the latest versions, it's gonna look very much like what you'd see on the DAS side, and all the same scripts and PowerShell modules and things like that you have configured, that will all work as well. So with that said, auto scale, which is provides an immense amount of value for powering up and powering down your environment. That's also there as well. So now that's added into the mix, on the on-premise release, and then with that, Storefront also was very different from what you'd see with Workspace, right? And so even though you were running DAS, maybe you still wanted to run Storefront at the access layer. Now you can actually got a facelift with the latest version, and it looks within tech preview looks just like Citrix Workspace. You also have, the activity monitor, the enhanced search, categories, etc. So it really brings a nice feature parity there as well. Massive enhancements across the board with Director. Really reducing the mean time to resolution. So things like the topology view, which is really nice because when you're troubleshooting, it'll actually show you, as the user using Rendezvous, are they coming through the gateway service? Are they coming through, Citrix gateway? What's their latency at the endpoint? So some of those metrics that you would see, typically with like control up remote DX, you're seeing some of that from the CWA client coming in. So they've done a phenomenal job with the session topology view. They've also added dynamic session recording as well. So session recording is basically there where you can actually record sessions or view those sessions directly from monitor, which is really nice. And then also the logon duration. So really nice breakdown of the logon duration there. So on the Rendezvous, so on the VDA side, breaking things down, obviously one of the nice things, one of the awesome guys on our team here, Ray Davis, did a phenomenal job. Him and Ozzy on one of our most recent ones we did, bleeding edge there, and did a ton of deep diving on the latest teams. Got a blog article out. And so with that, they worked directly with the Citrix profile management team and got the CPM hot fixes in place, and that actually made it in 2402, which is pretty badass to see that. Rendezvous V2. So basically, you have your control traffic, your proxy traffic with Rendezvous V2 now. That's default out the gate. You don't require the DNS at the site level turned on, but also more importantly, you do have the ability to do connectorless deployments for pure Enter ID and non-domain join scenarios. HDX got a slew of updates. Can't go into all of them right now, but traditionally, as Citrix has trended, reduced bandwidth, better graphics control, right? Audio support, massive enhancements for both gateway service around EDT lossy, audio codecs, things like that. So voice just got a ton of improvements for gateway service as well. Windows 10 and Windows 11 multi-session support. If you're an Azure customer, that's all there with the LTSR, latest LTSR VDA. And obviously, just like always, right, latest platform extensions on, vSphere, obviously vSphere, cloud, HV, or sorry, cloud, the public hyperscalers, right? So GCP, AWS, Azure, and then obviously AHV. Massive improvements around session recording, things like dynamic session recording. Audio got added into session recording for those call centers. WEM, great enhancements there, as well as Citrix profile management, increasing both security and the operational efficiencies there. On the storefront side, just touch on a couple of these. The big highlights, honestly, storefront didn't change too much, but there's a couple big ones. Obviously on the UI, but probably one of the bigger ones here is the uninterrupted VDA launch, right? So basically, if fast was down, you'd have basically an outage, right? And so there is now a PowerShell script that can be run, or a PowerShell command that basically allow you to still launch with traditional Active Directory authentication if you do have an outage in your environment. So that's a big one, as well as app protection for hybrid launches, and then advanced health check, which we've been doing for years, is now enabled by default. So can't really talk to all these, but just know if you're on 1912, you're looking at obviously Windows 11 support, 2022, massive improvements with both Citrix profile management, WEM, app protection, session recording, drag and drop, which we've been asking for years, adaptive audio, etc. So you get all that, plus what you have obviously from going from 2203 LTSR up to 2402, which Web Studio is probably your biggest one there. Non-domain join support, Windows 11 multi-session in Azure, huge improvements on the HDX side of things. Teams support, obviously, with all the enhancements happening there. I highlighted some of the big ones here. Vertical load balancing now is not site level, but is also at the delivery group level, which is really nice. But one of the nice things here is really looking at things like WEM process hierarchy control, right? For those seamless apps where you're actually preventing against jailbreaking, which is huge, right? So basically just launching that single process and not allowing any of the child processes. So all these additional enhancements, if you look at the bottom, 57 plus on just around just operational and IT efficiency. You can't cover it on a single slide. Citrix did an awesome job on the masterclass, so definitely check that out. Kind of goes into all these in great detail, but one of the ones I'm really excited about, like I said, is the session recording with audio support. That's something that we pushed really heavily for. Still looking to see what they're doing. It's not just an operations tool, but also a security tool as well, which is really nice. So really nice enhancements here on the LTSR. So definitely be looking going, 2402 if you're coming out the gate, definitely look to go that route, or you can go the the last current release and then wait for the 2402 CU1 there. So with that said, always check your VDOS infrastructure, both SQL DB and hypervisor versions. That all changes. As I mentioned, 2012 R2. SQL database side, 2016 Service Pack 2 or higher. Hypervisors, these are the support levels here. The Citrix has a nice CTX that covers that, so you want to make sure you look at that. Like any other LTSR, you have your option for in place or parallel. Those are a planning discussion based on risk tolerance, in your organization. If you want to go parallel, if you're doing, obviously you're on older OSs, makes sense to do, parallel there, or you can do, in place with a swing, kind of a swing migration approach. Definitely look at the 1912 feature removals. There have been features that have been deprecated as well as removed, and kind of put some QR codes there for that mention there. So this is a slide we did in 22. This was basically entitlement updates. You got WEM and session recording in the lower versions. Then 2023 came along, and basically we said, hey, we got this new universal license and IT managed CVAD, and there's all these different directions you can go. And that was 2023. And now we're saying, hey, forget about all that, because it all changed again. And so now we're in the latest here, which is which we're kind of excited about. So some of those things are still there. I exaggerated that a little bit, but it really changed, and it's important to take a look. The QR code essentially covers the matrix of what changed, but essentially you're looking at 3 versions of Citrix going forward. This was a reduction of SKUs, and that reduction of SKUs consists of private cloud, which is essentially all on-prem. The biggest thing there is with the private cloud version, it's truly private cloud in the sense where you cannot run traditional CVAD without the hybrid multi-cloud license. If you're just traditional private cloud, you cannot run it as infrastructure as service in public cloud anymore. That's a big, do I agree with that? No. But if you think about the name, makes sense, what they're trying to do there, and no cloud provisioning. That's the other big one. So those are really, really important to consider there. So with that, they launched a universal hybrid multi-cloud license. That's basically allows you to run similar to universal, which you heard before, last year. But now you can run DAS as well as, on-prem as well if you wanted to. It does include WEM and session recording, but the huge value add that they added into this license is basically things that used to be, where you were Advanced Plus, you had to buy premium, right? Which was app protection. Obviously, we know app protection for blocking, keystroke or keyboard keystroke logging, screenshot protection. Device posture check is an incredible service. Think of endpoint protection there. It's now as a service. So we're looking at full device posture check, adaptive authentication. This is unlimited NetScaler, right? So premium NetScaler that you guys are used, that you may be used to. You had to buy VPXs with your, your CVAD or your DAS environment. The hybrid multi-cloud license, when you buy that license net new, it essentially comes with unlimited NetScaler up to 1 terabyte of bandwidth, unlimited. So that doesn't matter how many VPXs at premium licensing. And that's a huge value added, and why they're bringing NetScaler back into the fold. NetScaler console, traditionally ADM, 15 gigs of storage there, and 100% all VIPs included. That's huge. On-demand training as well. So there are a lot of value added into the universal hybrid multi-cloud. So everything that you got with Advanced Plus previously, plus WEM session recording and all these other features. And then there's this Citrix platform license, which basically they're saying, hey, and I kind of like this. You might look at this and say, oh, invite only. What does that mean? And they really did this because over the years they built these premium and premium plus, and it became shelfware. Right? The account managers are out there, and we never did that. Obviously, we're looking at what's best for the customer, but from an account perspective, it's always about selling the latest version and with all the features. And they got tired of all this shelfware, so they said, look, we're going to have this platform license that's considered hybrid. It's strategic. It's invite only. It's only for the customers that are 100% invested with Citrix and want to do our full stack. And what that means by full stack is it's everything that hybrid multi-cloud includes, plus you got WEM for physical. You have Uber Agent, which was a recent acquisition, analytics, so secure analytics, basically. NetScaler Premium, unlimited, so not having a throughput limitation there, and then unlimited Citrix licenses. So that means it's a site license, and then essentially there's a true-up model and all these things. But at the end of the day, that's an invite only. You can't go buy that as a SKU. It's something that you work on, with your partner, hopefully us, your account rep, and you have these conversations to understand, does it make sense to do secure private access and expand beyond, your traditional apps and desktops? You cannot buy secure private access anymore as an add-on. cannot buy analytics as an add-on. They made it part of all the platform licensing. So with that said, this is just showing the unlimited, instances there on the NetScaler side. So it's a lot to digest, but it's important to understand that you have 3 editions now. Concurrent, this is probably one of the bigger announcements, and really was kind of buried in the documentation, but is concurrent a thing of the past? Interesting. Probably going to bring a lot of discussion. We're happy to work with you through this, but it's no longer measured as a unit of licensing. It's per user licensing only. So what does that mean? It means exactly that, right? So if you go look at the licensing, you can't buy a concurrent SKU. If you're an existing concurrent customer, you can continue to add, but net new is user only. On the back end, it's a concurrent license. It's very confusing on how they're doing it. So you don't have to worry about, as an admin, this check-in and check-out functionality anymore, right? It basically is all it operates like a concurrent license. You're paying per user. If you're a traditional net new concurrent customer, it makes sense for you to go that route. You have to buy user licensing, but Citrix is willing to negotiate and work on kind of this, ad hoc basis with customers that are traditionally a big concurrent customer. With that said, as we mentioned, Citrix Workspace Core and HCX Plus. So what that basically means is you're using Citrix as the quick deploy functionality within DAS. You can now launch that functionality, use the Citrix protocol, WEM, session recording, all the goodies, device posture check with Amazon Workspaces. We have a couple of these going on right now. We're excited about, and it's tech preview. It can do the same thing for Windows 365. So bringing that Citrix protocol and the additional functionality to both Windows 365 as well as Amazon Workspaces. All right, and I know I'm over, so I'm going to wrap this up here. But device posture check is a lot more than it's basically everything you saw with an EPA. So it's looking at MAC address, certificates, GeoIP. Looking at registry settings and things like that. So and it also has Intune integration. Is this device enrolled or not? And that's all part of this hybrid multi-cloud license. If you can't log in, you get a transaction ID. You can now search and see that within Monitor. They've done a phenomenal job integrating all that. So I'll just talk to this for a second here. At the end of the day, Citrix basically looked at their observability vision, right? They have Director, they have Director for on-prem, they have Monitor for on-prem, they have Analytics, they have NetScaler Console. And what they did was they added in the acquisition of Uber Agent. And Uber Agent, for those of you that know, agent-based, does a phenomenal job, but it's Splunk backend, right? There's some other backends as well, logging analytics, et cetera. But it also has a whole security engine, really around file system monitoring, risk detection, all those sorts of things. It's all baked in, but that's part of the platform license. You can't even buy this add-on. If your platform, it's included. But they did add this, so Control Hub still makes sense for customers beyond. If you're like, I'm a platform customer, does it still make sense? It does, with how it works from a physical standpoint there. Oz, I'll hand it off to you on the NetScaler side. I know I'm a few minutes over, but I took your 2 minutes back. But we'll go ahead and hand it off to you on the NetScaler side.
On this, so Krill, I'm going to leave you some time, but new branding, independent, sort of. So NetScaler was off on its own business unit and all that stuff, but they're kind of under the Citrix umbrella again. But they do have their own branding, their own website. If you haven't been out there, it's all independent from that sense. The new logo, everything like that, right? The high-profile CVEs from the NetScaler front has really positioned, Workspace and GAS and Gateway as a Service. There's more focus there, especially with the more feature parity, and customers not want to manage that gateway feature specifically anymore, right? So less managed customer NetScaler gateway and more Workspace and Gateway as a Service, which is similar to AVD and all the cloud control planes. They don't have their anything you can manage anyway. The rise and fall of unified gateway. If you remember that from a few years back, we were doing a lot of those unified gateway deployments, micro VPN. The RDP proxy, those kind of things, all that's kind of gone away. Features and functionalities replaced by SPA and native capabilities that Workspace and Gateway as a Service can give us, right? The big life cycle shifts are coming. 13, end of life. This is it. As you can see over here on the right, highlighted this summer, 13.0 drops off. 13.1, all of our customers, we're working to move them to policies and everything to work and get to 13.1. That's going to be the new maintenance channel. 14.1 is the feature release branch. So all that changes here in, as you can see, coming up here this summer. So this is a big one. There's a QR code there. The pooled licensing is kind of a necessary evil. I don't really agree with pooled licensing. It was cool when it came out, but then we had problems with the proxy for the licensing server. If it crashes, even though there's a grace, you can cause an outage. There's flexibility there, but additional licensing component around for that unlimited throughput that Shane talked about, you're going to have it as pooled licensing for that. And then just, there's every different form factor you can think of, and then adaptive auth too. So adaptive auth, we didn't mention it before, but you're given that in the universal hybrid multi-cloud as well. That's where it's a semi-PaaS service that Citrix manages most of the NetScaler piece, but not all. This is just all about hardware versus software versus PaaS. When you look at these different ones, NPX, SDX, on down. Just streamlined SKUs there, reduction in available hardware models. So they started simplifying that last year. Obviously, these are all available in every public cloud you can think of. The big three, GCP, AWS, Azure, robust feature set. We talk to customers all the time. Well, what if I use Azure Firewall or this, that, and the other? You can do all of it within NetScaler if you want. It's very robust what you can do with NetScaler. And the NetScaler console, especially now with the new SKUs and being available for all the capability, you got to use it, right? Upgrades, it's been huge with these CVEs that come out and just being able to push them. It's very stable as far as pushing those upgrades and doing that. And you can do so many across the board just in one click and schedule that. Really, this is everything of how robust NetScaler is on that side of the fence. I just want to touch briefly on that. There's been a ton of changes there on the NetScaler side for Citrix and NetScaler. And that's been happening here in 2023 and 2024, just what they're doing there. So exciting stuff.